Welcome to the Call to Farms podcast. I'm your host, Tim Ing, the homesteading agent, and I'm joined virtually by my lovely wife, Sophie.
Hey friends, it's Sophie with Sprinkle with Soil.
Hey, where are you?
I am in San Jose, California.
Hey, our hometown. Well, we just got back from Idaho from speaking at the Modern Homesteading Conference, and then we parted ways because you had business to take care of in Cali,
I
and I
know.
went back with the kids to Tennessee.
I know. I miss you guys. I'm glad
Oh,
we're able to meet here and chat. And we wanted to make sure we recorded everything so we could still remember. Yeah, plus people were asking us when our next episode was coming up.
yes. So here
So
it is.
thank you. Thank you, everybody, for keeping us and holding us accountable.
Well, we had a really good time though. The Modern Homesteading Conference, this is our third year attending it. It's one of our favorite ones, and I was able to speak on a couple of pretty important topics: how to find a land to homestead on, as well as how to build community when you don't know anyone.
Yeah.
But the most fun that we had was speaking with hundreds of people afterwards at our booth.
Yeah, you had packed rooms for both of your presentations. And I think it was just really, really cool to see. I think we heard many different types of questions this year than we did from previous years. And even not even that, like the last time we gave a talk was at the Prairie Roots Homesteading Conference, where you also talked about how to find land to homestead on. And those questions were pretty typical, but this year, or even this month, starting from June now, we're looking in July by the time this podcast comes out, but people are asking about AI data centers, and that was a real big hot topic for every single person in the room.
Yeah, I was really surprised to hear about this because it really brings the whole looking for natural spring water under a whole new light. I mean, that's something that's always been at the top of the list for all of our clients, wanting to provide fresh drinking water for their loved ones as well as for their livestock and growing food. But now it's just so scarce now, especially since we're having to compete with the government.
Right. It's a gnarly time. This is a new world that we're entering, and it definitely is one of the big reasons to consider getting your own water source. And if not, start thinking about collecting your own rainwater. Moving to a state where collecting your own rainwater isn't illegal.
In fact, one of the people that we did talk to just had such a heartbreaking story because it wasn't even disclosed to him. And that's something that I talk about when you're purchasing property, whether it's a residential home in the city or a homestead property out in the country, is to do your due diligence. And one of the things that wasn't disclosed to him was that they were putting in a data center just across the street from him.
300
Because,
feet from his fence line is what he told me.
yeah, because the property that was there had a bunch of trees on it. And he knew it was zone commercial, but did not know that it was going to become a data center. And now that things are breaking ground, that overnight devalued his property. And he definitely doesn't want to be living right next to a data center.
Right. These are new things to think about. And as homesteading agents who homestead, we know what's happening in the world. We have a really good pulse on what things are happening, especially with the advancements in technology and the effects of that on our natural resources like water. We even looked into, like, why don't these data centers use ocean water? Why does it have to be fresh spring water? What does the filtration process look like? What happens if they completely dry out the aquifers? And, we're talking about these data centers potentially really just crippling our landscape. So,
Yeah. They are devaluing properties places that they are going into. And they are not only just going into farmlands out in Iowa and Nebraska, but they're also going into urban areas too. I believe Georgia and Virginia are a couple of
Virginia.
states, right?
Yeah.
many data centers are going into. And so properties that have natural springs and where you can still own the watershed, that is driving prices up through the roof.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So it's, that's one of the many topics. We don't have to jump right into that. And
No, we don't. But that was something that really took us because we, as a family, as modern homesteaders, and you working in tech before, it's just kind of bringing it in full circle. And so we are at the tip of the spear. And in terms of incorporating, like our family is not about, burying our head in the sand. We want to be able to understand how AI can still play a role on our homestead, but also now realizing that the rise of all these data centers will have an effect, financially as well as, practically on the homestead for those who are thinking about homesteading.
right. It's difficult to find the balance, but there has to be a balance. When Trump took office, it was his second day in office, the second time around, that he put in billions of dollars in funding for Larry Ellison, OpenAI. And so it's in the government. Elon Musk has had access to our federal government system. And if you think that you haven't used AI, or that you aren't taking advantage of the system, right? It really is. Even if you're doing a Google search, right? Like, that is still using the data centers regardless. AI is just something that has come up as a topic of conversation. It's really taken off for the last couple of years, but it has all been run through the same types of systems. And so now with flock surveillance cameras, we're talking about a lot of things that is happening in the US and all over the world that we knew about. Like, we knew this day was going to come. We knew that these surveillance, if I can even say that these days, this has been taking place in China before. And so it's happening all over the world. And if we're naive enough to think that it's never going to happen, the only thing, like you said in your talk, is to really be within community where we're pushing back. And I know where we are at, we're pushing back hard against a lot of these things. Can we guarantee 100% of insulation? No, we can't. And then if it's not data centers, what's the next thing? They're drones now, and I believe it is a federal criminal offense if you even shoot down a drone that is flying over your property. So there's a lot of things that we can try our best to protect against, and these are the things, a topic of conversation for us to have. And it's great to be able to have these considerations over, many different types of people from all over the country coming over together at a conference. But these are the types of things that we talk about in our Call to Farms community. So we're not out there in the public. These are the private conversations. Join us. We'll have a link below if you want to take part in these conversations, because things like saying surveillance, can I even say that anymore? That's a scary world we live in.
Yeah, I mean, we just thought that this would be worthy to at least bring up because it is definitely a topic of conversation. But moving on to one of the other things that was pleasantly surprised in seeing is that there was more youth at this conference, and a good majority of our clients are in the retirement stage or are retiring because now they finally have that nest egg to pursue their homesteading dreams. But one of the questions that came up while we were there and speaking was how can a young couple, for instance, how can they get a leg up? How can they afford homesteading? Because one of the biggest barrier entries is simply cost
Right. We
and the
had a
cost of
lot
living.
of we had a lot of couples in their young 20s and 30s, that more than I remember from last year. I think there were a couple of families that were younger, but this year just seemed to have more younger families that were coming up to us and asking, what do we do when we didn't follow the traditional path of getting a W 2 job? How are we able to finance our homestead? And so those were really great questions to field. And then after that, of course, we had a whole conversation of other people, retired folks, investors within the crowd that were asking us what are the different types of loans that we can provide for financing for people who want to start their homestead.
Yeah, it was really refreshing to see the next generation asking these questions, these thoughtful questions, and wanting to homestead. So it does provide a lot of hope. And I love the fact that we're thinking out of the box and we're all aligned and with similar values as well. So one of I'll just share one vignette was that we're able to share that owner financing is a great way of being able to afford some of these properties. I know we're both loan officers, but at the same time, we always want what's best for our clients. And that is a great way for a young couple to get into the community. And that's what I'm going to be talking about next about community, because community was a really big topic. And I didn't know at first when they asked me to talk about community. I was like, wow, okay. Normally I'm used to just talking about land, but talking about community, it, I think back on our journey and we've done so much in the past 5 to 7 years in building community and saying yes to the right things, to the right people, and just being open to, well, just being open and willing to do the work. And that is a big deal. So if you want to share a little bit about that in terms of our story and maybe a couple of the things that were pivotal points for us, especially with now that we're doing milk, it's just so awesome to be able to look back and share how we were able to build community and build trust.
I think you hit the nail on the head in the presentation when you said that, and afterwards, I had a lot of people come up and tell me that it really is giving more than you take, right? Being givers. I had somebody who said, yeah, there's somebody who lived in Sandpoint, Idaho. We've known her. We talked to her and she said she has not been able to get into the community. They're not accepting of her. And he said, well, after listening to your talk, I realized all she sells are perfumes, right? They're not things that people need. And so he said, yeah, we are just a take society. We are a consumer society. We're not producers. And I think that when we think about how we can be producers, which is what you talked about in your talk, is coming back from conferences like the Modern Homesteading Conference or any other homesteading conferences around the country. But even if you aren't able to visit and attend a conference, there are still people around you that you learn skills from. And once you do that, bring it back home, perfect it. And even if you don't perfect it, even in the process of perfecting it, you can share your goods with those and others around you. I think that's one of the most beautiful things, is to be able to share in that with one another, whether for us that's dairy, because we have so much of it and we have very little time to go out to the community. This is what is the best hack for us to be able to, since we are milking the cows anyway, and as we have extras, we're not just making butter and yogurt and ice cream for ourselves. We don't go through a lot of dairy in terms of drinking a lot of the milk. We do a lot of long fermentation for our yogurt. And then of course we have ice cream and butter, but anything else, any extras, we're able to provide that for our community. And we have people of all ages, families of all ages, that is able to partake in that. And we're so grateful. And oftentimes we don't actually want to take cash. We don't want your cash. We want to share in our skills. So if you have something that is of abundance on your farm, for example, our milk, for our gallon of milk, we're able to trade for a pint of raw unfiltered honey from our neighbor. We're able to get starts. We're able to get compost, biochar, because he makes it fresh from his farm. We're able to get non-sprayed hay during a time when there's drought all over the country right now and all farmers are hoarding their hay, we're able to barter or trade a round bale of hay for a stick of butter, a pound of butter, and to me, that's worth it. Like, what's $30 going to do for me if I can't buy hay? So, you know, I think it's just a matter of like showing up for people when they need the help. We have some equipment that we're able to trade. We don't have the largest trailers. We have some trailers that we can, with our neighbors, we kind of go back and forth and share our trailers with one another. And I think that's really what matters for people who live in the country. It's not like living in the country where we've outsourced a lot of things, right? The way that we used to live. And I remember living this way with my relatives around, where if we needed someone to drive us to the airport, we could just call on one of our aunts and uncles or cousins to take us. Nowadays, if we need somebody to take us, we'll just call an Uber. It's just, we've outsourced a lot of things instead of going to the grocery store. And I'm guilty of all of this too. I'm just saying that, like, there's a time and place, and sometimes it's a lot faster to outsource and it's a lot slower, just like it is, asking your kids to do something. But like you said in your talk, everybody wants to have a village, but nobody wants to be a villager.
Absolutely. It is also a great way to have a form of insurance. So when you were mentioning that we can get a round bale of hay, for those who don't farm or homestead, that is a huge relief. That what is $40 to me when this can actually relieve my anxiety, because we've been there where we okay, me, I didn't do the math, and we had a little too many sheep or a little too many calves that were born. And we go in the wintertime and I don't have enough hay. Where am I going to go to get organic non-spray hay in a pinch? Who's going to have that in reserve? And I was trying to explain that in my talk, that when you come out into the country, most people are going to hoard their hay and they're going to be very wary about outsiders coming in. They're going to sell to their family first. They're going to sell to people they've grown up with first. And the ability, and so one of the questions that was brought up was, so how long did it take for us to form a community to where we think we feel pretty good? And not that we ever feel pretty good. We're always constantly building upon it. And I thought about it and I said, well, you know what? I think it was just this past winter, because we had that huge ice storm that really hit Nashville area in the middle Tennessee, but it didn't hit East Tennessee quite so hard. But I remember the week prepping prior to it, a lot of people were freaking out about it, and there was news. And I know that if we were back in California, we would have stocked up at Costco. But here we were out in East Tennessee, and we actually felt pretty good. Not that we were like, you know, cocky about it, but it's like we actually felt comfortable in the fact that, well, okay, maybe we need to do a little bit of this or a little bit of that. But all in all, we had most of our supplies, and we also had our neighbors and we had our community in place, so that just in case something happened, we knew who we could call.
Yeah, I think that was a new feeling. And I think that what took us 5 years to get to the point where I'd say, knowing that an impending storm was going to come, we didn't have
Mhm.
to go out to get anything in advance because we have enough, and to sustain like 7 days, right? So that was a relief. And it's there was something I was going to say. Go ahead if you have something.
Well, I do, because I don't know if we want to talk about this or just going to make the cut, but compared to where you're at right now, San Jose, we both grew up there. You can count on one hand how many people want to visit,
Right.
versus where we're at now
We got
with
two hands at least.
people who were complete strangers to us a few years ago, and what we've been through, and the mere fact that we want to help each other out. We want to help. That's a difference. versus I don't know if it's just California culture or maybe it's our Asian culture of not wanting, or maybe me being a man, I don't want to ask for help. There's like three things going against me here.
Yeah.
I'm shy, or I don't want to admit that I need help, or I don't want to owe somebody. But that's a different mindset. Once you go into the country, you don't have people don't have millions and millions of dollars to just outsource and buy everything. We have to be smart about it and be more efficient with our resources. That's what homesteading is all about. And we're all in it together. And finally, it feels like, yeah, it's clicking. This is our family. This is our community. And
Yeah,
so,
and it's not just about like being there, and like for us, the way that we've built community has always been around food. I think that might just be an Asian thing or a me thing, right? Like, and in Vietnamese, my mom would always say when I came home from college, she'd say "ăn chưa," or even when we come home late night, she always asks us "ăn chưa," and that means "Did you eat yet?" It's always "Did you eat yet?" Not "How was your day?" Because that is her love language. That's our love language. It's just we want to feed you. We want to nourish you. We want to make sure you're okay. You've got a full belly and you're happy. And the food that I'm providing for you, that I've cooked for you, or that I even grew for you, is bringing a smile to your face. And that's our expression of love. And when we come into community, whether obviously where we're at, there's like zero Asians, but in our community, I think that's a universal love language, and that's, I think our friends have come to know that about us. Because in your presentation, I really liked the slide where you had the children helping our farming friends who were 6'5", 6 feet 5 foot tall, and our cattle ranchers. And our girls were teaching them how to harvest their chicken. And in the second photo was a photo of me teaching kimchi to our community. And in the third photo was a photo of mom playing mahjong, because a couple of weeks ago we just hosted our very first mahjong, not tournament. What'd you call it? Game
the
night.
game night.
Yeah.
And I wanted to add to that is that we may not be the biggest or the strongest because we can provide nourishing foods.
Right. We have to play on all of our strengths. Like, it will take me forever to get a T-post into the ground when, our neighbors will just take 2 pounds and it's into the ground solid, right? It'll take me like 50. And I know that's not my strength, but what we can do is, yeah, we can raise chickens and we can harvest them and we can make nourishing broth and salad and food and feed you while we're playing game night together. Community isn't just when you need them. Yes, we're blessed that we do have community when we need them, but it also is in those off moments, those moments where you can get to know one another. You can see how people play. You can have fun together, right? And it may not be with everybody, or relationships might be, and this is something that we've had to learn. I think that post 2020, we really dove into like who shares the same values as we do. We want everybody to be on the same page. When we got into homesteading, we thought that all homesteaders wanted to homestead, or they live this life. They chose the harder right because they wanted to know exactly how they source their food. And then you get into this whole thing of like, oh, maybe people don't get into homesteading for the same reasons that we do, and that's okay. Maybe people have faith, and thankfully they do have faith, but it may not be to the extent or the level that we do, or that we might not be at their level, and that's okay. Or that, some people are okay with corn and soy, and we might be staunchly against it, and that's okay. Some people with pork, yes pork, no pork. I mean, it's a whole thing, and we can agree to disagree on 1,000 different areas of just food alone, much less, politics and religion and all those other things that can complicate relationships. But I think that in moments where we can put together a mahjong game night, or anything like that, we were able to bring in our old clients that we brought into the area, and many of them traveled quite a bit to get to us. But it was nice to see that in times of need, and you did a great job introducing everybody at our game night, where it made it easy for people to remember what other people did for a living, or what unique story they have about themselves, so other people can come and talk to them. And that's how we build community. I think it becomes nearly impossible to build community around people who agree with you 100% of the time. I've
Yeah,
learned that.
absolutely. So building community was an extremely important topic. It's something that drove us to move all the way out to Tennessee. It's ingrained in our story and continue to this day. Community and relationships, it takes work, and we're constantly working on improving, building upon it. So I'm glad they asked me to talk about that. And just speaking with just hundreds of people that were there and seeing, I just wanted to mention, like, going to the conference, just seeing our girls sell
Oh, yeah.
pottery, not just the selling aspect, but really the work of actually creating their masterpieces beforehand, and how they were able to work together and logistically plan to, and also pack it and everything and carry it on board and display it, like the act of doing everything and thinking about the business aspect and how to price it and what to talk about with the people who came up. It was really rewarding to see it all come to fruition at
It
the conference.
it was a lot of fun. Yeah, I think you thank you. You touched upon the fact that with pottery, it takes a lot of time and a lot of planning ahead of time. And beforehand, I was working with the girls and asking them, what are some things that are easy for us to ship? We're going to have to carry this on. And then knowing what has sold in the past, let's see what you can create and what people would be willing to buy. And so they had a lot of fun. We ran the kiln again. We're so excited to do another round, and they're they're already talking about, since they have a growing wait list now for their pottery, of doing these monthly drops. And it will keep them really, really occupied with understanding the business aspect of things. Because believe it or not, if you were at the conference and you saw the girls, they were testing pricing from every single item so that they could get their items sold. And there were some that, you know, we got into some heated debate over pricing, but I'm just really impressed, and I'm very inspired by them, to see how hard they worked beforehand. Our little one made earrings, and she sold several pairs. She made 50 pairs ahead of the conference. She sold two just from a social media post, and she was so excited about it and was ready to ship it out. And it's just really great to see, because there's so much more to it, from the photography to the marketing, the behind the scenes, catching inventory, talking to people, seeing what they liked, what colors, getting feedback is a beautiful thing. And all of it are only things that you can learn because you've put in the work. You've put in the work, the labor, the hard work that went into it. Your heart went into it. If I had made it, for example, and then they went to sell it, it's a completely different experience for them. Here, I saw them invested in the conversations. They stood up when they were sitting down. Anytime somebody got close to their pieces, they stood up and they introduced themselves. And it's just really cool. That was nothing that we had to do. We did not intervene with any of it. It's 100% at this point now. Um, Now that they're in the double digit ages, we are pretty hands off with it. I mean, other than making sure that they don't hurt themselves when it comes to the kiln, um, they're on their own.
Yeah, I was pretty impressed with their grit and their stamina in making it through the entire day and not getting tired or not getting hungry. We did check
We
in on them.
we had a full cooler full of food.
Okay. Yes, we did. Um, So we also did a good job planning ahead of time as well
We
for
did.
that. Yes. And in
Good job, Tim.
addition, it wasn't just all work and no play. We were able to get away beforehand and go to Glacier National Park and got to see some of God's beauty there. And kids got to do the stamp in their book and get some nice photos. So it's good. I mean, this is a really good balance. 2026 this year has been a really good year for our family in terms of reassessing where we're at business wise, farm wise, and being able to incorporate more fun into all the work because there's always going to be more and more work.
Yeah, I think if you've been following us, like December was a really rough time for us in our relationship. And I think it was because we work really hard. We work really hard together. And because we work together, I think sometimes the challenge is, we forget that we're more than just business partners. And so over the last 6 months, I think, you've done a good job, and I hopefully am a better listener. As you say, I'm a terrible listener. I listen to that. But we've been doing kind of semi-regular date nights, and then we do family date nights, and we do game nights with our community, and really have been trying to focus on the human side of things, not just numbers all the time, because that's something that is my strength. I love looking at numbers. I love data. I love tracking everything in our family. But sometimes that can come off as like completely cold and devoid of feelings and emotions.
No, no, no. Well, we love you, Mom, and we want you to come home safely. So come home soon. For all of you listeners out there, thank you so much for tuning in. I know it's been a couple of weeks. We're back. There was a lot of things to prep for the conference. I'm going to leave you with a couple of questions that we would love to hear from you. So wherever you're listening to us on YouTube or Spotify, Apple, a couple of questions. What is keeping you from homesteading? Because we received a whole bunch of answers. What's your biggest obstacle right now that's standing in your way? Because Sophie and I would love to help walk you through that. It's just taking the next step. And I know it can be intimidating and scary, but if we can do it, so can you. And that's why we're keeping up with these podcasts. And that's why we're keeping up with the Call to Farms and why we do what we do and why we love it. So thanks so much for tuning in. And until then, stay healthy.
Bye,
Bye, friends.
friends.